Hey folks, Aaron here. Welcome back to another anime review. Today we're looking at episode 5 of Violet Evergarden. Now, I'm going to be quite frank with you guys. You know, I have been talking to various people about Violet Evergarden, and I've definitely heard some different spectrums on this, where, you know, some people are really loving the show, and I completely understand why. It's got some beautiful animation, it's got some very strong stories and emotions, etc. And then I've seen some people like myself who think Violet Evergarden is kind of overhyped a little bit. And to be honest with you, I can understand both sides of the spectrum. I really can. I'm keeping myself middle with this because, you know, it's a show that, on one hand, it does things very correct. It's, like I said before, beautiful. It has great ambiance. I love the voice acting. I think everyone does a phenomenal job of keeping in their roles. And it gives you this really interesting tension that we don't see too often in anime, of a story about a war, but that's already ended. But on the other hand, the thing is that a lot of these stories, and this is my biggest gripe with this week's episode and why I'm talking about this week's episode we had a focus on, you know, this young wife, or, well, soon-to-be wife, I should say, who, you know, because of the war had a lot of problems with getting married. And even more so, she was then kind of unconfident if she was, you know, right for her partner. And meanwhile, the partner, as we learn in the later parts of the episode, also felt the same. He was worried that he couldn't make her happy. You know, he was worried that she would see him as a crybaby just like she was. It's a very, I want to say, nice tone. Yes, I liked that concept. But at the same time, it's been done before. You know, these are stories that, you know, yes, okay, we get them in the spectrum of an after the war type scenario. But at the same time, we've seen stories like this before in other anime. I mean, it's not, you know, Kino's Journey, for example, has a lot of stories that are very similar of people, you know, forced to abandon what they love, for example. Or, you know, even Spice of Wolf has stories like that. It's, you know, these are just two of the spectrums. I mean, two examples. There are tons of shows that do the same concept, and that's my biggest gripe, because I watched this week's episode last night when I was wide awake. By the way, I was actually awake up till like 2 o'clock in the morning. So I watched this week's episode, and, you know, I didn't enjoy it. I was kind of just bored by it. And it's not that it did anything per se wrong. I mean, the story was well executed, the characters were executed. The ending was probably the best part, where we see Violet actually smile for the first time. And that looked really nice on her. I think that was such a cool thing to see, because we really haven't seen Violet smile, or even try to really smile. And, you know, it was comical in the beginning of the episode where she's trying to show that she could smile, so she's moving her face and stuff like that, but even then she couldn't do it. And we even get that little tidbit after the credits, essentially, where we have an old military, you know, teammate come up to Violet and is almost like annoyed that she has found a life outside of the war-torn battlefield she's so used to. And I was very surprised by that, because that part was actually very well executed. I love that you had that tension of this dude coming in saying, "Oh, look at you, you know, you're now an auto mail dial. You know, what are you doing? You know, you were meant to fight on the battlefield. You had bloody hands," as he said, etc. And that was some good tension for the end. But I feel like they should have put that maybe a little bit earlier, not nearly after the credits. But I get it. It ended the week's episode on a solid note. So I don't completely dislike this week's episode. It did have that nice ending sequence to it. But, you know, it's just that I want stories from Violet Evergarden that aren't really explored. We've seen a lot of these things in anime before, with the, you know, the love stories that are kind of shattered because of war. You know, I think it was Izetta had a story like this, which I wasn't a big fan of Izetta, and Yujo Senki even had a story similar to this. But I want a story that focuses more on the troubles of people now trying to build back up. You know, that's the one thing that's interesting about Violet, is that we're seeing her character going from, you know, war dog to a regular civilian. Why not see some other characters that have been like that? You know, why not have stories similar to that? And I think that would be what propels the anime better. Violet Evergarden can still redeem itself. It's, you know, it's doing a good job right now of keeping me interested per se. Yes, it had this week's episode being a boring episode, and even last week was okay to me. But, you know, it does have still a lot more episodes left that it could build itself back up and go into these stories that are more interesting to me, or more, I want to say, just darker in nature, or more really focused on the after effects of the war. Because we really haven't understood everything about the war yet. We don't know what really happened. We know that, various sides, of course, fought each other, but we don't know how much people suffered for it. And I think that that's the one thing that intrigued me about Violet Evergarden, is because we already started seeing some stories of people getting messed up by the war. For example, the one thing I really loved about, I think it was a couple episodes ago, where we had the brother and sister, that was an ideal story right there, because you're seeing the brother suffer, after the war, and even the sister suffering because she's watching her brother, kind of crumble and just become downtrodden by everything around him. That's what I want to see more of at Violet Evergarden. I think that's what's going to be even more interesting about the show. But, it's, if you like this show a lot the way it is, it's perfectly fine. It's not there's anything wrong with you. There's a lot to love about the show. But when you've seen a lot of anime do similar things, you have to almost expect that your mindset will, of course, think, oh, I've seen this before, or yeah, I've known this before. And that's the double-edged sword, because, people have told me before, and and I always laugh because it's not, in my mind, very true. But, when you see a lot of anime, that's a good thing. And like any form of medium, it's a good thing and a bad thing. I've grown up with anime, so I've seen a lot of stories, obviously. I'm almost at 1,000 anime fully watched. And I really think I'm actually already at 1,000, but, now sometimes I'm like trying to figure out what I added, what I haven't added, etc. But, it's a thing that you start getting used to all these stories that you see already, and you want something different. And that's the beauty of Violet Evergarden, is that it's dabbling with something that's not been done very often, and it could do so much better. And that's what I want from the show. So, that's my opinion on it. So this week's episode, it did an okay job with the ending, but the beginning part was meh. I really didn't care for the story too much. But I completely want to understand. I completely want to just say this, folks. I don't hate the show. I'm so tired of hearing people say, "Oh, you must hate the show." It's not like that at all. I don't hate the show. If right now it's passing with a C+ in my mind, it's not that I hate the show. I just want more out of it. And I think it can. I think a lot of you, if you really sat down and thought about it and didn't live into this hype world of Violet Evergarden is the best thing in the world, you would realize there is more it could do to be even better. And that's the thing I'm trying to say. But anyways, what do you guys think? I would love to hear from you in the comments below about this week's episode and just the series in general, because we're already 5 episodes in, so I would love to hear from you. I have Death March coming out probably in 5 minutes, because I'm already finished with that episode, and I have some things to say about that too, so look forward to that review. I'll talk to you guys later. God bless you all. As always, if you like my reviews, you know what to do. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.